and welcome to Transformed, a program where you get to witness firsthand how ordinary people are transformed by extraordinary power, the power of God's grace. I'm Marielle, thank you for joining us. My guest today is Farhad Khan, a community worker in the Salvation Army Australia and the chaplain in Sydney Congress Hall since 2011. Previously, he was the youth and evangelist minister in the Campbelltown Church of Christ for 7 years, helping the lost here and overseas. Farhad is married to a lovely lady, has 3 sons and the 4th one on the way. Thank you, Farhad, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thanks. Farhad, God had a great plan for you. We're hoping to share your story with us today. So firstly, can you tell us where you were born and tell us a bit about your family?
Sure. I come from a group of islands in the South Pacific called Fiji. Fiji is a very small place. Population is about 1 million there, and it's made up of indigenous Fijians and Indians. The Indians make up about close to 50% of the population, and a large majority of that Indian population are Muslims and Hindus. There is a small minority who are Christians as well. My parents come from a Hindu and Muslim background. My father was a Hindu and my mother was a Muslim, and I have two brothers as well. So I'm one of 3 boys.
3 boys. Are you the oldest?
I'm the middle.
The middle.
Yeah.
So which part of Fiji?
Yeah, we grew up in Suva, which is the capital of Fiji. Yeah.
Farhad, something happened to you while you were growing up that wasn't very pleasant. Can you share it with us?
Yes. When I was 2 years old, my father and my mum's brother, who was my uncle, they went to a friend's house to fix his car, and on the way back home they decided to stop by the side of the road to look at one of the street stalls just on the road. In Fiji we have lots of street stalls along the road where people are selling fruit or vegetables or fish or things like that. So my dad had stopped to look at some of the food on the stall. And it just so happened that while my dad and my uncle were standing by the side of the fruit stall, the brother of the man that they had just fixed the car for was driving back home, and he was drunk. And as he drove past, he hit my dad and my uncle, and my dad was dragged under the car for a significant distance. And he died instantly on the road, and my uncle died sometime later in hospital.
And you were 2 years old at this time?
I was 2 years old at the time, so and my mum lost her husband and a brother, at the same time, and she raised us on her own.
It must be a hard time growing up, but God has used that miraculously to bring you to His kingdom later. Farhad, you mentioned that both sides of your family follow different religion. Which religion did you follow?
Look, after my father passed away, we grew up knowing both Hinduism and Islam. While I was, because my mum would obviously take us to visit my father's family and my mother's family. So whenever we went to visit my father's side of the family, or if I ever stayed there, I would be involved in all the Hindu things that you do in the Hindu religion. My father's family are very devout Hindus, especially my grandfather, a very devout Hindu man. So I would sit with him and pray to the Hindu gods. He had a little shrine in his bedroom, and I still remember sitting with him in his room and praying to the Hindu gods. Next door to the house was a temple that we used to go to quite regularly, and I was involved in the temple life as well. Yeah, and so that was kind of my life when I was with my father's side of the family. When we went to our mother's side of the family, they're all quite devout Muslims as well. So I would be involved with the Muslim side of things. So I would observe the dietary regulations. I would pray with my cousins. We would even go to the mosque together, and any Muslim function that was held in the house, we would participate fully in that. So that was kind of our life growing up.
So you were following both sides, or you were just doing the traditions of both sides?
Yeah, I guess I was just being exposed to both as I'm visiting my two families. There wasn't any conflict between our families. We all grew up together, and my father's side of the family and mum's side of the family all got along quite well, and there wasn't any problems there. They just knew that the other was of a different religion, but there wasn't any tension or anything like that. So as we were growing up, we were just being exposed to different religions. And I also went to a Catholic school as well.
Right.
So like I said, Fiji is quite multicultural as well. So and that was quite it's quite acceptable in Fiji, where people of different religions go to a Catholic school or public school. So that wasn't really a problem. Yeah. So I kind of grew up learning about Hinduism and Islam, and also a little bit about from the Catholic school, a little bit about Christianity as well, but not a lot, but a little bit. Yeah.
But you came to the point where you had to choose either to be a Muslim or to follow the Hindu religion.
Yes. When I was about 12 years old, my mum actually asked us if we would like to choose a particular religion, and I guess for no other reason than at that particular time my brothers and I happened to be going to my mother's side of the family a lot, and we had a strong connection there. So we all three of us decided we wanted to be Muslims. So at the age of 12, I suppose I became officially a Muslim. I saw myself as a Muslim. My grandfather from my mother's side is an imam as well, and he's quite. He was the vice president of the Fiji Muslim League. So he was quite a well-known and well-respected Muslim elder in the community, and he made all the arrangements, if you like, for our conversion. Yeah. And one of the first things that happened was my name was changed. I was given a Muslim name, which is Farhad. Farhad Khan is not my birth name. My birth name was Deepak, which is actually a Hindu name. And so when I became a Muslim, I also lost my surname, my father's surname, which was Nair. Yeah. So instead of Deepak Nair, I became Farhad Khan. Yeah. And that was one of the big changes. Yeah. And
so what else changed in you and in your life?
Yeah, we started learning Arabic. We started going to Arabic lessons, and we were getting more and more involved in the prayers, learning how to pray, do the salat, and we were fasting regularly every year. When I became a Muslim as well, I had to undergo circumcision as well, which was quite a painful and traumatic experience for a 12-year-old, because usually it's done when you're very young. So that was a traumatic time for me, which I still remember, but that was something we had to do. To become a Muslim, you had to follow the laws and the regulations, and so that was what happened.
Yeah, but anything changed in your heart?
I wouldn't say there was a big change in my heart. It was more of an identity thing. I belonged to the Muslim community, to the Muslim family, I suppose. So nothing really changed inside my heart at the moment, but I was able to just identify myself as a Muslim. So if somebody asked me, what religion do you follow, I would say I'm a Muslim. Yeah. And so I would refuse eating pork and only eat halal food, and I would go to the mosque and those sort of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the age of 16, your mom took a very important decision to bring you to Australia.
Yes.
And the whole family, and your two brothers as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about this experience and this journey?
Yes, I was 16 years old when we migrated to Australia. It was a very difficult time for me coming to Australia, because at 16 I was very happy in Fiji, and Fiji is, in many ways, Fiji is a paradise. You know, beautiful beaches, beautiful people, peaceful land, and I was growing up very happy and content in Fiji. I had made some very, very good friends. I was just very settled and very happy. When we moved and arrived to Australia, it was like coming to a different planet.
Yeah.
I just couldn't fit in. It was very difficult for me to adjust. I found life in Australia very, very difficult. Schooling was very hard. Trying to fit in with the Australian culture. I couldn't understand the accent to start off with of the Australians. And just the way students would relate to their teachers in school was so different to the way we were brought up in Fiji. So I found myself losing a lot of self-confidence when I was in school, and more I began to withdraw. And so by the time I finished schooling, I actually became quite an introverted person, and I also developed a bit of a stutter as well, because I wasn't confident in speaking at all. I just developed a stutter, and I would really struggle to even put together a sentence in English. You know, if I went to the shop, for example, I would have to rehearse the line over and over in my head before I would say something, and then when I did say something, I would confuse myself, and I would mix up all the words, and it wouldn't come out properly. And it just gradually became worse and worse. My escape was
a hobby. You found a hobby.
I had to try and escape from this because I wasn't able to mix with people. I didn't have any friends. So the way I escaped from this was I got really involved in martial arts and music. I've always had a love for the martial arts. And I found a martial arts school nearby where we used to live, and got heavily involved in martial arts. And I just found that I was really good at it, and I got along very well with the instructor, and I have been doing that for over 20 years now, and I continue to have that relationship. He's become more like a family, and he's become more like a father figure to me over the years.
Why was that? Was he Muslim as well?
No, he wasn't a Muslim at all. In fact, he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. Probably see himself closer to the Buddhist philosophy. But we just got along well, and he just, I guess I was really drawn to him because he was a good teacher, and I just enjoyed martial arts, and it was something that I found that I was good at. So I became quite obsessed with it because it provided an escape for me. And speaking earlier about identity, martial arts kind of gave me some kind of identity when I was in Australia. It was because I was so lost. This was one thing that I knew I was good at, and I could be identified as Farhad who does martial arts in school, if you know what I mean, or at universities, people would know, oh, he's the guy that does martial arts. So that was, for me, that was some kind of an identity thing as well.
And it was an escape from what was happening around, all the trouble, or?
Yeah, definitely an escape. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would, and same with the music as well. I got involved in music. I learned to play drums and percussion, and I would spend hours and hours practicing in my room. I wouldn't socialize much. It wasn't until much later in university where I started to socialize a bit more. I made some friends who were Muslims, and I started socializing with them a little bit more.
So what did you do after school?
After I left school, I went to university for a couple of years. While I was at university, my two brothers had become Christians by then.
And you're the middle brother, so
Yes,
you're older.
yeah. My older brother had earlier become a Christian through some friends he had made in university, and my younger brother had become a Christian through some friends in school. Now, when I was at university, as I found all this out, I felt like I needed to become more of a Muslim because they had become Christians. Even though we got along well and there wasn't really any major tension in the family, I felt I needed to keep the faith going for our family. So with the Muslim friends that I had made at university, I started to go to the mosque with them and just became a bit more observant in my Islamic duties, and I read the Quran more and prayed more and just became a bit more aware of my faith. And I think that it was around then when I was starting to become a bit more religious, if you like.
Yeah. Muslim.
Muslim.
Like a
that's
real
right.
Muslim.
Yes.
And when your two brothers became Christian, did they try to explain to you how they became Christian? Did they try to convert you as well?
My older brother, I recall, every now and then would talk to me about it. I was quite shut off to it. So he knew, he understood where I was at and wasn't ready to hear anything about Christianity. My older brother and I used to play a lot of music together. And he was involved in a church band in his church in Wollongong. So one day he invited me to come and play with some musicians from his church. And he just asked me would I be interested in coming to play in the church. And I thought about it for a little while, but it didn't really take me long to say yes, because I loved music and I loved playing with my brother, and I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to play with some musicians. So yeah, it didn't take me long to say yes. I decided to go down to the church, and I found myself playing in church. So here I was, a Muslim playing in church.
I was going to ask about your first experience as a Muslim to go into a church. How did you react? How was that like? Yeah,
look, I was a little bit nervous, I think, when I first got there. But they were very friendly and very open, and I think, to be honest, I don't think they knew at the time that I was a Muslim. Okay. But either way, regardless, when they did find out that I was a Muslim, they were still, their attitude towards me hadn't changed. And I made some very, very good friends who were involved in the music there, and they're my friends still today. So my initial experience in the church was very positive, and they were very welcoming, and I really enjoyed playing music with them. So much so that I ended up, I would go for 3 years. I went to that church and just played music. Every Sunday I would play. But in my heart, I was always guarded. I wasn't interested in Christianity at all. I was happy playing the music. And the friends that I had made, they were happy to just be my friend. And there were a few times where they would share with me, but I wasn't really receiving the message about Christianity. But, for 3 years I sat in church and listened to sermons for 3 years, and slowly the message was starting to sink in, I guess, and my heart was softening towards Christianity.
So what was more powerful, the messages in the church or the songs, or both?
I think the most powerful thing in church was the people, the friendship and the relationships that I had built with the Christians. It wasn't so much, at that time it wasn't so much the message, because I was so closed to Christianity, I would refuse to accept any of it. So that wasn't really making an impact for me at the time.
So what happened? How did you, because we know you're a Christian now, so how did you actually become Christian?
Yeah, sometime later in the church, a new pastor came to the church, and we developed a really good friendship straight away, and we would go out for coffees and talk a lot, and it was around that time he would share a lot about Christianity, and he would actually ask me a lot of questions about Islam as well, which I was happy to engage in that conversation with him. And what I found at that time was that I was becoming quite defensive about Islam, and I found myself debating with him a lot and trying to push the arguments about Islam to him, and the usual arguments about, we would try and convince him that the Bible is corrupt and that Jesus wasn't crucified. So I would try and debate with him, but he was a very, very godly and very caring man, a very gentle man, and he never engaged in a debate with me, but he was always interested to hear, and he would just share what he believed the message of Christ was. So we would have these great conversations. Anyway, one day the pastor and I were sitting in his office, just having a conversation, and I remember that particular day we were talking about Moses, and I would say, yeah, the Muslims, we believe about Moses as well. It's not, we're not that different, so, Anyway, we were talking about that. At the end of that conversation, the pastor said to me, is it okay if I pray for you? And I said, sure, you can pray for me. So he started praying for me. This is the first time somebody has actually prayed for me individually and face to face. So he starts praying for me. So he's closed his eyes and he's bowed his head like this, and he's praying, and I'm sitting there looking at him like this. I'm just watching him pray. And then as I was watching him pray, because I respected this man, and out of respect, I closed my eyes as well, and I bowed my head, and I joined him in the prayer. And as soon as I closed my eyes, as soon as I bowed my head, something just grabbed hold of me, and I couldn't open my eyes, and I couldn't lift my head up. It was like something literally just held me down. And while the pastor's praying for me, I felt the presence of someone standing behind me, and I knew somebody is standing really close to me in this room. And for some reason, I just knew that this person was Jesus Christ.
Right.
And I just knew that it was him. And then I felt a hand touch me on my shoulder. I felt his hand rest on my left shoulder. And he just said 3 words to me. He said, Farhad, it's time. He said, Farhad, it's time. And at that point, I broke down and I started crying, and I just literally just wept, and it was like this burden was coming off me. I didn't even realize I was carrying a huge burden of loneliness and depression and isolation and just being lost in this world. It was just all coming off me. And then I finally opened my eyes, and the pastor was still praying. He didn't realize what had just happened inside of me. And there was a big shift inside of me. So he opened his eyes when he finished praying. He looked at me and he said, "Are you okay?" Because I was tears all over my face. And he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "It's time." I said, "I don't know everything about Jesus. I still have a lot of questions, but one thing I do know is I need to follow him."
And this was the moment where you decided to follow Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And it was a few weeks short of my 25th birthday. And I knew at that point I needed to surrender and follow Jesus. And I have been following him since then.
That's really encouraging, Farhad. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We'll share a little bit more in the next episode.
Sure.
Thank you very much for being here today. Thanks our viewers for watching us today. We'll continue Farhad's story in the next episode. May God bless you.